Hey, what's up, everyone? So, we've got to talk about something that's been developing, and honestly, it's pretty wild. Donald Trump is getting a pretty quick lesson, an old saying, mess around and find out because his big tariff scheme has already started to backfire. And trust me, it's not looking good. It's just yesterday, Trump took to Truth Social, of course, where he posted all his big announcements and declared that on January 20th, one of his first executive orders will be to slap a massive 25 tariff on all goods coming into the United States from Mexico and Canada. His reasoning, he said this tariff will stay in place until drugs, especially fentanyl, and illegal immigration stop flooding into the country. He called it an invasion and said he was done with it. Guys, both Mexico and Canada are not exactly new to Trump's antics. By now, they've got a pretty good sense of who he is. And let's be real, they know he's not all about diplomacy or negotiation. He's the kind of guy who goes straight for the heavy-handed approach. And guess what? Both of these countries are pushing back already. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Let's start with Mexico. The Mexican president has already suggested that if Trump follows through with these tariffs, Mexico might respond in kind with tariffs on U.S. products. Now, that's not just some empty threat. Mexico knows they have leverage over us, and they're not afraid to use it. And there's Canada. Canada, they've got this way of being super polite, but still getting their point across loud and clear. Canada issued a statement, and while it wasn't exactly an aggressive response, it was a pretty obvious warning. They reminded Trump that the trade relationship between the U.S. and Canada is balanced and mutually beneficial. They pointed out that Canada buys more from the U.S. than China, Japan, France, and the UK combined. So clearly, they know their worth. Oh, and they also dropped a little tidbit that $60 crude oil imports come from Canada. Basically, they're saying, we're not just your neighbor, we're essential. And if you mess with us, you're going to feel it. And that's where the problem really starts to hit home. Like, there are no winners in a trade war, zilch. I don't care how big and powerful you think the US is, we live in a global economy. Our top three trading partners are Mexico, Canada, and China, and Trump's already picked fights with two of those. Sure, we can inflict pain on them with tariffs, but the reality is that they can hit us right back. And when they do, we're going to feel it. Let's take Canada's oil for a second. As I just mentioned, 60 of U.S. crude oil imports come from Canada. That's a massive deal because we rely on that oil to fuel our energy sector. If Canada decides to retaliate by cutting us off or raising prices, it's going to have a huge impact on gas prices and energy costs across the U.S. It'll make everything more expensive. And Mexico has significant leverage when it comes to our food supply. Seriously, take a look at this chart. You'll see that the bulk of our vegetables come from Mexico. That's 15 billion pounds of produce a year. If we put tariffs on that, the cost of produce in the U.S. will skyrocket. And we'll still need to import that food. We just won't be able to afford it as easily. Now, if you think Trump's tariff plans won't hit us directly, think again, the cost of goods is going to go up across the board. Think about all the things we import from Canada and Mexico. From Canada, we get everything from cars, tractors, trucks, machinery, appliances, aluminum, iron, steel, wood, plastics, and paper. And from Mexico, it's a whole other list: machinery, electronics, cars, film equipment, beverages, alcohol, steel, furniture, you name it. And all of this will get more expensive, not just a little more expensive, a lot more expensive. If you voted for Trump because you thought he was going to bring down the cost of living and make life cheaper for average Americans, this is a wake-up call. Trump talks about America first and bringing jobs back, all of that. But the reality is, the way the world works now, tariffs are a tax on the consumers. And when he slaps a tariff on these countries, it's not the exporting country that feels the pain. It's us, the American people, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And let's not forget, this isn't even the first time Trump has dragged us into a trade war. Remember what happened with China in 2018? He imposed nearly $80 billion worth of tariffs on $380 of Chinese goods. That was one of the largest tax increases in decades. And what did that lead to? A major hit on American farmers. A lot of them lost their markets, and the government had to step in to bail them out using taxpayer dollars. Trump's trade war with China was supposed to help American farmers, but instead it hurt them big time. And now he's threatening to do it all over again with Mexico and Canada. But here's the thing. If Trump goes through with this, it's going to hurt pretty much every part of our economy. You can see from this chart just how much we import from Canada and Mexico, stuff like cars, parts, machinery, electronics, steel, and even the materials that go into housing and construction, lumber, cement, and all those materials that keep housing prices in check. They come from Canada. And what happens when those prices go up? Housing costs go up too. And then there's the auto industry. A lot of cars cross the border multiple times during the production process. And now you're looking at disruptions that will make cars more expensive. So say it again, there are no winners in a trade war. It's bad for everyone. It's bad for consumers. It's bad for workers, and it's bad for businesses. We rely on these countries, Canada and Mexico, so much that picking fights with them is a huge mistake. And if you remember, Trump and the Republicans spent the entire year trashing the Biden administration over inflation. They blamed the White House for high prices, even though inflation was a global phenomenon. It's something that hit every industrialized country, not just the US, but now the first thing Trump wants to do in office, he's trying to implement a policy that will increase that's right, he's about to raise costs for consumers all across the country. Either Trump has absolutely no idea what the consequences of tariffs are, or he just doesn't care. He's using inflation as a political tool and then turning around and making the situation worse. Either way, it shows a serious lack of understanding or care about the American people's well-being. So what's the bottom line here? If Trump triggers a trade war, we'll get more expensive cars, electronics, food, fuel, construction materials, you name it. And it won't just be short-term, it'll be long-lasting. The US is too intertwined with Mexico and Canada to just start slapping tariffs and expect no consequences. I know it's tempting to think that the US is so powerful that we can just do whatever we want without any repercussions, but that's not how the world works anymore. The global economy doesn't operate in isolation, and we're better off working with our allies than picking fights with them. So keep an eye on this situation. It's not just about politics, it's about the prices we pay every day. And trust me, if this goes the way I think it might, we're all going to feel the pinch. If you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm always giving you the latest and keeping it real with no ads or paywalls. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.